everybody, welcome back to the Darcey Bra sewn pattern tutorial. So in this tutorial I'm going to be applying all my elastic, so the fold over elastic to the top and the band elastic to the bottom. I'm also going to be adding some little tabs here of strap elastic so I can attach my adjustable strap in the next video. It's exactly the same method now for applying the elastics to style 1, which I've got here, but also style 3. We've got the same overall silhouette and you just treat them exactly the same. The pattern does indicate to baste the back, main and line together at this point, but for the sake of the tutorial I am just going to pin it in place. You can hand baste it, that's what I normally do, just some really long stitches, just all over the back pattern piece. Just holds it all in place. This is one of those things that you kind of go, no, it'll be fine, and then end up regret doing later when it's all a little bit wobbly. For the band, I'm going to use this 1 centimetre, 3/8 of an inch, that is, wide picot elastic. So one side is nice and smooth, that's going to go against the skin, and then the back of the elastic will go towards the fabric there. It's a little bit rougher. So I'm going to cut the elastic approximately 6 centimetres, so that's 2.5 inches shorter than the bottom length of the band. I do like to indicate some kind of length to cut the elastic in my sewn patterns, but this is more of a guide. Depending on your elastic, you may want to make that either longer or shorter. I find the best and most accurate way to do this is to run it along the edge that you are trying to cut it to. So that takes us to about there. So then what you want to do is fold your elastic in half and mark the centre point with a pin. It's just a good visual for where the halfway mark is in your elastic. And you want to place your elastic, so I've got the elastic sort of side and then the smooth side, and you want to place the back of the elastic to the right side of the fabric. And if you're using picot elastic, so you'll have your picots at the top and the straight edge of the elastic along the bottom. So it's going to sit on the fabric like this. The smooth side is facing up, picots up, straight edge that way, and all in position. So let me just explain the theory before I sew it. So what you want to do, because you've got your pin marked at the center point in the elastic, as you sew, so if you do a few stitches here to secure, and then stretch the elastic so the pin matches the center front seam. That's the halfway point in the bra and the halfway point in the elastic. So what this is going to do is basically ensure that the elastic is sewn on evenly. What you don't want is, as you sew, kind of don't stretch it here and the elastic might get stretched out, and then if you kind of get to here and realize you've got to stretch the elastic and then stretch it loads, it's going to end up really gathered here and really wobbly here. We don't want that. So that's the theory. Let's sew it. So let's put some of this theory into practice then. I'm going to be sewing the elastic with a 3-step zigzag stitch. If you don't have one of these, a normal zigzag will work just as well. You want your needle to come down on the left side, just really close to this edge of the elastic. But you don't want to sew over the top and kind of on the fabric as well, but just along this inside edge. This is so that in the next couple of steps we're going to fold this under like that. And you want that to be nice and close so you can just see the decorative edge of the elastic or your picots there like that. What you don't want is it to sort of sit like that where you can see half the elastic as well. So that's why we need to sew it nice and close to that edge of the elastic. So start at one centre back seam and place this under the foot. So as I said, I'm using a 3-step zigzag stitch. I have my stitch length set to 2.5 and my width set to 4.5. So then what you want to do is find your centre front seam and the pin in the centre of your elastic, match those up, and then stretch the elastic so it's the same length of the fabric. You don't want to stretch and then keep on stretching. You don't want your fabric to be stretched out at all, and just make sure that it's all sitting right. I'm just going to grab that little bit there and begin sewing. So I've got to my halfway point and taken the pin out. Then it's basically the same again, just matching the end of the elastic to the end of the fabric. Stretch it to the length. And pinch a point about halfway along just to make it easier. And then carry the same, just the same. So there we are, you can see that's nice and evenly sewn on. There's nowhere that's really gathered, but it's just nicely contoured. There we go. So the next step now is just to trim back the fabric to the stitches. I'm going to start at one end, use the threads, and then just trim back this excess fabric. So it'll look like this. Now you can use applique scissors for this, if you like, but I'm just going to use these quickly. So we are, from the right side you can see there's no fabric sticking out underneath or sort of past the elastic here, and then on the inside it's just nice and neatly trimmed back. So for the next step, I'm going to add a little sort of tab here of strap elastic with a ring on. This is so I can attach the adjustable strap later on. So I'm incorporating into the bottom edge of the band. So when we fold this up like this, then the tab will stick out here. So it's just going to make it a little bit more supportive. The elastic's pulling on the elastic rather than the top edge of the bra. So we're going to need some strap elastic. So cut yourself two 12cm lengths of strap elastic. That's about 5 inches. Go for around there. So there's the strap elastic. Now you are going to need your 2 rings at this point. I'm using 12mm wide strap elastic, so I need 2 12mm wide bra rings. So take the first one and just thread it on to the halfway point, fold the elastic back on itself so the ends match, and do that with the other one too. So there we go. So in order for this to be pointing in the right direction when we flip the elastic up, I'm just going to sew it in this position here, and then when the elastic is turned up to the inside, it's going to be sitting in the right place, and it'll look like that on the inside. So there is a little dot on the paper pattern piece, the rough position. I'm just going to eyeball it. If you do have a problem with straps slipping off your shoulder, you might want to move it closer to the centre back. It just brings it sort of more across, rather than if you have it over here, it's going to be close to your shoulder where it could fall off more easily. So I'm going to eyeball it and put it around there. So the edge of the strap elastic is sitting roughly where the top of the picot elastic is. I'm going to sew just along this edge closest to the straight edge of the elastic, so along this edge rather than this edge of the picot elastic, just with a straight stitch just close to this edge here. And there we are. So now what I'm going to do on the inside, just so when I fold this under here like this, it's going to create quite a bit of bulk here from the right side. You can really feel the strap elastic and the picot elastic, making it quite bulky there. So what I'm going to do is just kind of grade the strap elastic. So I'm going to cut that one quite short. Leave the second one slightly long. I'm going to trim it back just a little bit to make sure it's not sticking out beyond where the picot elastic is, so that when we fold it over like that, you end up with a bump where it sort of sits lower. So that looks like it's going to be sitting fine. And do just sort of fold it up at this point and make sure that it's all going to sit nicely. And there we are. I can see that's going to be fine. So in order for this to be symmetrical, and because I eyeballed it, what I'm going to do is just place that sort of right side together, matching all the edges, and take my other piece of strap here, the ring, just get it in the right position, and also check the length that I'm putting it at. So yeah, I can see that's nice and symmetrical. And also again with a straight stitch. The same again, just going to grade the strap slightly and trim back all my threads. So my machine is back to a 3-step zigzag stitch. I've got a length of 2.5 and a width of 4.5. So instead of sewing close to the edge here, like we did before with the picots, you do want to sew a bit further out so you do catch the sort of inside edge of your elastic. So the reason for this is you don't want to sew too close to here that the stitch sort of ends about here, and then you end up with quite an uncomfortable lip sort of situation here where it's sticking up. If your elastic's quite firm, that can get quite uncomfortable. So you do want to sew across that and make sure you sort of secure the entire width of the elastic in place. So as I go, I am going to apply a small amount of tension on the elastic. That's just to make sure that the fabric is straight. You don't want to stretch the elastic. You just want to make sure that your fabric is sitting nice as it goes under the foot. Just make sure your strap tab there is sitting straight as well when it goes under the foot. So as you sew, do just make sure the fabric isn't kind of getting pulled in this direction as you sew and it's all getting a bit skewy. Just pull it straight. And there you go, because we've used a 3-step zigzag stitch. There's a lot of thread in that stitch, and so it stretches with no popping stitches. This next step is really important if you don't want to get to pretty much the final stage of sewing your bra and then end up very frustrated when the centre back doesn't fit correctly into your back closure. So because back closures come in a variety of different widths, I have recommended a 3.8 1.5 inch back closure for this pattern, but I've allowed a little bit extra with the pattern piece in case of just slightly wider back closures. But what we do need to do then is remove this extra here. So because we're going to be applying a fold over elastic to the top edge, that's not going to be adding anything. It might add about 1 millimeter maybe, just as it kind of goes over the top, but you're not going to be folding the elastic under like we have done with the elastic at the bottom. So you can just literally place your back closure and cut this off. So what I like to do, just to make sure that it's going to be symmetrical on both sides, is I like to pin these together. Now because we've applied these tabs, they just need to be folded out of the way. We don't want to accidentally cut them off. But what I do is just pin these together so the ends are matching, and then the bottom edge is matched. I do this all the way up to the side seam. Like this. So what I like to do is line up the bottom of the bra closure with the bottom edge of the elastic. So the fabric is sitting slightly higher than the elastic edge. So I just match the bottom of the elastic with the bottom edge of the bra closure. It just gives you that extra millimeter It's better to cut slightly under than slightly over because it's easy to slightly stretch the fabric out than cram it in if it's a little bit too long. So then you do just want to taper this edge. If we go for about there, just taper into the top edge, making sure that we're doing it quite gradually. So now you can see when we come to sew our back closure on later, it's going to fit nicely in and it's not going to all hang out, and we're going to have to kind of gather it to get it to fit in. So there we go. So now it's time to apply the dreaded fold over elastic to the upper edge of the bra. I do actually enjoy sewing fold over elastic, but I know some people really hate it, so I'm going to try and simplify it as much as I can. So fold over elastic is double-sided. It very often has a shiny side and a matte side. You can use either. So with this one, I'm going to use the matte side as the right side of the elastic, so the shiny side is now the wrong side. So we're going to start by applying the elastic to the centre front here. Again, I've given some guidance on the length to cut your elastic. So if we aim for 3 centimetres shorter than this length, that's a good place to start. It does depend a lot on the elastic that you are using, but if you start with 3, then you won't go far wrong. So to cut the elastic to the right length, again, I'm just going to line it all up and that's the length of the centre front pattern pieces, and 3 centimetres is about there. So let's cut it there. So much like we did with the band elastic, just going to fold this in half and mark the centre point with a pin. This is just to make sure that we sew the elastic on evenly and it's stretched an equal amount up one side and down the other. So I've got the centre point. If you take the wrong side of the elastic, so the wrong side is the side that you don't want to see, and just line it up like this. So you want the edge of the fabric to sit along the fold line in the elastic. So again, the theory exactly the same as we sew down here, just stretch the elastic so the pin at the centre of the elastic meets the centre front, keeping that fabric edge along the fold line in the elastic. And we're going to use a 3-step zigzag stitch. I've got my machine set to a 3-step zigzag stitch, so there's a width of 3.5 and a length of 2.5. Just do backwards and forwards stitches. So I'm going to match the pin in the elastic to the centre front of the fabric, and then stretch the elastic to the length of the fabric. And then sew along the top of the fabric, not going over the edge, because we don't want to sew on the other half of the elastic. And then just sew. So when you get to the centre front, just stop sewing with your needle down. So we need to pivot around the centre front because it's quite a deep V. So I'm just going to lift the foot up with the needle down and twist, sort of pivot this around so it's lying along the correct position in the fold over elastic, again with the edge of the fabric along the fold line. I'm going to take the ends of the fabric and the elastic and line those up, and then stretch the elastic again and just pivot all this around and then put the foot back down. So then I'm going to carry on sewing until I get to the other end. So this is what the bra should look like at this point. If you can see the stitches, wait for it to focus, there we go. You can sort of vaguely see them there. So in order for when we fold this down, in order for it to not be a wobbly wavy edge, what we do need to do is just neaten up this fabric edge. So I'm just going to trim back all the fabric to the stitches that we've just sewn. Again, you can use applique scissors for this, but just trim back all the fabric. So there we are, the fabric's just been trimmed back slightly. So now what we want to do is fold the elastic down to the right side. So just literally folding the elastic as we sew it. And it's going to look like this. So again, just top stitch with the same 3-step zigzag stitch we've just used all the way along. So when you get to the centre of the seam, again stop with your needle down, lift the foot up, pivot the work around, and then carry on sewing on the other side. So if we've sewn our bust seam correctly, what you'll find is the edge of the fold over elastic will sit along this seam right here. And this is what we look like at this point. So next up, we're applying fold over elastic to this edge. Again, in the sewing pattern instructions, I've given some guidance on the length to cut your elastic. So you want to go for approximately 3 centimeters again. That's 1 1/4 inches shorter than the length of your fabric. So there's the actual length. Let's go for right about there. So there's no halfway point to mark with this piece of elastic. It's a relatively straight line. So again, just place the wrong side of the elastic, the side you don't want to see, to the inside of the bra like that. And then sew using exactly the same 3-step zigzag stitch, the same method as we did before, by stretching the elastic to the length of the fabric. So again, trim back the excess fabric to the zigzag stitches, just so we get a nice crisp fold in the elastic. So once you've trimmed all the fabric back, just fold the elastic down to the right side, and you'll see that at the tab bit here that's going to go through the slider, the fold over elastic should meet. So just fold that down to the right side and then top stitch with a 3-step zigzag stitch. It's like before, don't stretch the elastic towards you, but pull it through from behind the foot. And there we go. So as you can see, we've got no gathers again, and the elastic hasn't been stretched out. So this is what you are sort of aiming for with your fold over elastic. You just want it to lie nice and flat, slightly contoured in. It's just to give the edge just some structure. Nearly there with the fold over elastic. I'm just going to sew this quickly onto this side so we can move on to the next step. You just sew it on exactly the same way as we did here. So there we are, that's all the elastic now applied. So in the next video, I'll be showing you how to assemble and attach your adjustable bra straps. I'll see you there.